Okay, so this deep dive starts with, well, a legal fight that's really been simmering for something like 2 decades. You've brought in quite the pile. Legal docs, news pieces, analyses, all centered on this huge defamation lawsuit from Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner.
Yeah, and this isn't your average celebrity spat playing out in court. This is a really big strategic legal play. It's actually the first time ever that the Kardashian-Jenner brand, their whole machine, has switched tactics.
So it's down.
From just doing PR defense, managing the story, to going on the offense legally. They're hitting back hard against these accusations that, frankly, touch on potential federal criminal stuff.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to really pull apart the legal strategy here and, honestly, the pretty shocking stakes involved in this case. We want to unpack why, after navigating literally every kind of scandal you can imagine, this specific thing, accusations of RICO charges, why that was the line they finally decided to draw to protect this multi-billion-dollar empire they've built.
Right. What we're looking at here, when you break it down, is almost like a masterclass in modern reputation defense. They're taking what looks like a standard defamation claim and turning it into a very calculated weapon to publicly and kind of permanently shoot down a lie that went viral.
All right, let's set the scene a bit. Why now? Kim Kardashian, she's 74, Kris Jenner is 69. They've basically lived their lives under this incredibly intense media microscope.
For almost 20 years, yeah.
They've weathered storms about, business stuff, personal lives, relationships, everything. But the sources are clear. Neither Kim nor Kris had ever filed a defamation lawsuit until this one, against William Ray Norwood Jr., Ray J. Late, in 2025.
And that choice, deciding to actually litigate instead of just using their, let's be honest, incredibly skilled PR team, that really tells you how serious they viewed this threat.
Right.
The family's always been masters of PR, managing crises, spinning the narrative, absorbing hits, but accusing them of being mixed up in a federal racketeering investigation, a RICO investigation, that's just not the usual celebrity gossip.
It's different.
It's potentially an existential threat to their business, to their corporate identity.
Because it shifts the whole conversation, doesn't it? It goes from tabloid fodder to, actual regulatory concern. It's not just, do people like us? It's, do our investors, do our partners trust us?
Exactly that. IRSO, that stands for the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. I mean, legally speaking, it's kind of the nuclear option. It suggests organized, ongoing criminal behavior. If there was even a rumor of a real federal probe like that, it could instantly put their global brand deals in jeopardy, raise all sorts of regulatory red flags, and absolutely crater investor confidence. RICO allows the government to potentially seize assets, freeze accounts. It's serious business.
So filing the lawsuit is kind of like a preemptive strike.
Totally. It's aggressive crisis management. They're seizing the narrative themselves and basically declaring loud and clear, this is completely false, and we're going to prove it in court under penalty of law.
So what exactly did Norwood say that pushed them over this edge? The lawsuit lays out two main statements from 2025, and the plaintiffs frame it as things getting progressively worse.
Yeah, the first one was back in May 2025. It was a bit more speculative. He was in that TMZ documentary, the one about Sean Combs.
Right. United States v. Sean Combs.
Yeah, that one. And he made comments suggesting something like racketeering charges against the Kardashians would be appropriate. The lawsuit calls this sort of the calculated first step, planting the seed of the idea.
But then things really ramped up a few months later, right? That seems to be the core of it.
Oh, absolutely. In September 2025, Norwood did a social media live stream. Huge audience. And this time, he wasn't hinting. He made a very direct, very bold claim.
What was the quote?
The complaint quotes him saying, "The federal RICO I'm about to drop on Kris and Kim is about to be crazy." And then, crucially, he immediately followed it with that really explosive comparison saying, "It's worse than Diddy."
Wow. Okay, invoking the Diddy case, which everyone knows involves serious federal investigations, that adds a whole different level of gravity, doesn't it? It makes it sound less like a personal vendetta and more like a legitimate, massive scandal.
It absolutely does. And the legal team's response in the filing is just unequivocal. They flat out state the claims are blatantly false and put it in the strongest terms possible. No such federal investigation exists, period.
Okay, let's talk about the legal fight itself. Because even with statements that explosive, winning defamation as a public figure, it's famously tough. What's the biggest wall they have to climb in court?
Yeah, the biggest one is simply who they are. In legal terms, they're considered all-purpose public figures. Now, if you or I, private citizen, were suing, we'd basically just need to show the statement was false and it hurt us.
Simpler.
Much simpler. But because Kim and Kris are constantly in the public eye, the legal system basically says, look, you chose this life, you have access to the media to rebut things, so you have a higher burden. You have to prove malice.
Actual malice. They can't just show it was untrue. They need to prove Norwood acted with actual malice. Can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean legally?
Sure. Actual malice has a very specific two-part legal test. The plaintiffs, Kim and Kris, have to prove that Norwood either, 1, knew his statement about the ECHO investigation was false when he said it.
Which seems hard to prove, knowing what someone else is thinking.
Incredibly hard. Proving someone's state of mind, very difficult. Or, the second option, they have to prove he acted with reckless disregard for whether it was true or false.
Okay, and that second part, reckless disregard, that seems to be where their legal team, Alex Spiro, is really zeroing in. That feels like the strategic move here.
That's exactly right. The argument they're making is that Norwood threw out these incredibly damaging, potentially career-ending accusations without doing any homework. No attempt to verify, no corroboration, nothing.
He said it on a live stream.
Exactly. And that lack of any due diligence, they argue, is reckless disregard for the truth. But the real sort of genius part of the strategy here is how they're using the lawsuit itself.
Right. How do they actually plan to prove that reckless disregard in court? Especially if proving he knew it was false is too hard. This feels like the key insight, the discovery trap you mentioned.
It absolutely is. It's quite clever, really. The lawsuit legally compels Norwood, through the discovery process, depositions, document requests, all under oath, to cough up the evidence backing his claims.
So show us the proof of this federal RICO investigation you talked about.
Precisely. Show us the emails, the documents, the communications with federal agents, anything. The entire strategy hinges on the very strong assumption that, well, no such evidence actually exists because the investigation itself doesn't exist.
And when he can't produce anything credible.
That failure becomes their proof. His inability to back up his own claims under oath becomes the plaintiff's primary evidence demonstrating his reckless disregard for the truth.
That's really smart. So they're essentially using the legal system's own mechanisms for finding facts to publicly and officially debunk the whole thing. The court process itself becomes the fact check.
Now, to make that actual malice argument even stronger, the legal team also needs to show this wasn't just a one-off slip-up or carelessness. They need to establish a pattern, show hostile intent.
Which means digging into the history.
Exactly. That's why the complaint deliberately frames Norwood's recent statements not as isolated events, but as the latest chapter in what they call a 20-year sustained campaign of harassment.
And this inevitably circles back to 2007, doesn't it? The whole sex tape leak that ironically really launched the Kardashian brand into the stratosphere. It created this really toxic but inseparable connection that's just lingered for decades.
And the sources indicate the family is absolutely leveraging that history to build their case for motive. They point to specific examples over the years to show, a pattern of malice.
Like what?
Well, things like the 2013 song I Hit It First, which was obviously a crude reference to Kim. Then jump forward to 2022, he very publicly threatened to sue Kris Jenner over what she said about the tape's release during that lie detector test she took on TV.
Right, I remember that.
So the lawsuit paints this picture, arguing the driving force behind the RICO claim isn't some genuine concern, but that Norwood is, and this is close to a quote from the filing, unable to accept the end of his fleeting relationship over 20 years ago. And he's basically trying to grab headlines again, revive his fading notoriety.
And then there's the legal firepower difference. That plays into the narrative too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You called it asymmetric warfare.
Totally. Look at who the plaintiffs hired. Alex Spiro. He's a legal heavyweight, known for representing huge names like Elon Musk, Jay-Z. Hiring someone like that isn't just about getting good representation, it's a message. It signals they have deep pockets and they are ready for an all-out fight.
And on the other side, Norwood's first move wasn't exactly a measured legal response from a top firm.
No, his immediate reaction, as highlighted in reports, was that defiant Instagram post. Something like, I'm not about to be silenced. And that kind of emotional, maybe impulsive social media reaction, it actually plays right into the plaintiff's strategy. It reinforces their image of being calculated and professional versus the defendant appearing, let's say, less controlled. Every statement he makes outside of a formal legal process can potentially be used against him as more evidence of intent.
Okay, so the plaintiffs seem to have a pretty solid game plan, but what's the downside for them? What's the risk for Kim and Kris in launching this kind of major lawsuit? Is there a counter threat?
Oh, definitely. The big risk is what you might call Norwood's potential scorched earth defense. His riskiest, but perhaps most potent move would be to try and use the discovery process of this defamation case to basically relitigate the entire origin story of the Kardashian empire.
Focusing back on the 2007 sex tape again.
Exactly. He could try to argue that, okay, maybe using the specific legal term RICO was inaccurate, maybe that was hyperbole. But he could argue his underlying point that the family built their success on a corrupt and manipulative business enterprise connected to that tape is substantially true.
And substantial truth is a valid defense in defamation cases, right?
It absolutely is. If the gist or the sting of the statement is true, even if some details are wrong, it can be a defense. So this strategy would shift the focus from the very specific, probably false, RICO claim to a much broader, messier debate about the family's entire history and ethics.
And that involves dredging up all the old, unpleasant history around the tape in depositions, potentially in open court. It sounds like exactly the kind of media circus they'd want to avoid.
Desperately want to avoid. That's the reputational gamble they're taking by suing. But it also explains their likely calculation.
Which is?
They're probably betting that the sheer weight of the legal pressure, the cost, the time, the stress applied by a top-tier team like Spiro's will force Norwood into settling quickly and quietly before he can really get deep into that kind of disruptive, wide-ranging discovery about the past.
So the endgame isn't necessarily a massive damages award.
Probably not. The real prize, the core objective, seems to be getting a settlement that includes two key things. First, a full public retraction of the URIC claims, get that lie officially taken aback. And second, a permanent injunction, basically a gag order stopping him from ever bringing it up again.
Neutralize the threat completely.
That's the goal. Neutralize the specific legal claim far more than collecting money.
Looking bigger picture, what does this case tell us about, celebrity and reputation management now? It feels like a shift.
I think it really does. This lawsuit seems to draw a new kind of red line. General gossip, relationship rumors, even criticism of their business, they've weathered all that. But specific, verifiable criminal accusations, especially federal ones like RICO, this case signals that those will now trigger immediate, powerful legal action, not just PR spin.
So it's a move towards proactive legal warfare.
It looks that way. For the super famous, super wealthy, it shows that protecting the brand might now involve deploying serious legal firepower as the primary weapon against damaging viral falsehoods, particularly in the age of social media where things spread so fast.
So wrapping this up, the core insight we've pulled from all these sources is that this lawsuit isn't just about winning in court. It's really a meticulously crafted legal strategy. It's designed to use the legal process itself, the demands for evidence, the threat of perjury, as the ultimate tool to debunk and neutralize what they see as an existential threat to their global brand.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case study, and it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. We see here how one viral claim, true or not, can spark this massive legal battle. Is having the resources, the ability to unleash overwhelming legal force, now becoming a necessary part of the cost of maintaining a multi-billion-dollar brand in the face of online attacks? Where does that leave the balance between protecting reputation and, say, free speech, even if that speech is controversial or unpleasant?
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the strategy and stakes behind this major celebrity legal showdown. We hope it's given you a clearer picture of everything going on beneath the headlines.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into your sources.